oil pastel drawing. The thing with oil pastels is you have to think of them like a painting, so that our final product should have a very thick layer of oil pastels so that it really feels almost like an oil painting. So the supplies that I have your basic 12 school issued oil pastel set. I'm using a very smooth surfaced paper. I tried it with kind of a rough surfaced watercolor paper, and it didn't turn out very well. The paper was just really rough, and it took a lot of layers and a lot of pressure in order to get that thick, smooth surface that we want to our oil pastel drawing. So try to choose a paper that has a relatively smooth surface. Okay? All right, let's begin. Okay, so we're going to start with our first layer. You have to think about an oil pastel drawing in terms of layers. That first layer are going to be the underlying colors that we're going to want to build on top of. So I have my initial pencil sketch. In my pencil sketch, I drew out where my highlights and my shadows are going to be. So I have a sense of where, just a map of where I need to add some darker colors. So this cup is technically like a really light green. However, I'm going to start with a light blue. So what I'm going to do is very lightly, I'm going to add a layer. Notice how I'm not pressing very hard. I'm going to add a layer of this blue. Okay, that's the first layer of the cup. Now, this is a cast shadow, and I know that that is going to be very dark. However, we're not going to use black. So here's my black. I'm going to throw that away. All right, so I'm going to start with what color I think, a nice dark color that could go underneath that shadow. And I think I am actually going to use a purple. So I'm going to use a dark blue first. Also not pressing very hard. And then a red on top. Now I also have the coffee, which is going to be a dark brown. Again, I'm not going to start with brown, but I'm thinking what color I want to put underneath that brown. And I'm actually going to do a very light purple. Okay, so that's layer one. All right, so now for layer two, I'm going to choose another color for layer two. Since this cup is essentially green, I'm going to go in with some green and add a layer of green on top of my blue. Now comes the most important part. I've added my layers of color underneath. This is kind of almost like an underpainting. Now I'm going to go in and do something called burnishing. I'm going to take my two light colors. I have a gray here and a white. Sometimes they get a little bit dirty, so you have to go in and clean off the surface of your oil pastels. All right, so now I'm going to go in with, I'm going to start with my gray, and then I'm going to use white. I'm going to go in with my gray, and I'm going to add a layer of gray to the surface of my cup. And then I'm going to use my white, and now I'm going to use a lot of pressure. And that white is going to essentially blend together all of the colors that I've used so far. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing for the shadows. The shadows, however, I'm actually not going to use the white or the gray because it's going to lighten it up, and I want them to be really dark, almost like as if it was black. So I'm going to go back in with my colors, my red, my blues and my reds, and I'm just going to use a lot more pressure to get a nice thick layer of oil pastel. Now I'm going to do my coffee. So I have my underlayer of purple, and now I am going to use the brown because it does need to eventually look brown because it is coffee. Of course, doing details with oil pastel is really hard. Try to bring back my highlight, which I kind of lost. Now this is a little bit too brown, so I'm going to go back in, and there's a bit of a shadow on this coffee. I'm going to go back in with my blue and put a layer of blue, and then put a layer of brown on top of that blue. Okay, so the next step with my coffee cup is I do need to go in and add some shadows. I have my highlights, I have my midtones, I don't have any darks. So I'm going to go in with my greens and blues and bring back some of those areas that have some darker shadows. This is a little bit too dark, so I'm going to go back with use my gray, and again, burnish and blend that out. So I want to create that transition between this value and this value using that white. Okay, so the next step is we're going to think about the background. I'm keeping it very simple because this is just a demo. In the original photograph there was a background, but right now all I'm going to do is create a value so that I can clearly define the edges of my cup. I know that I want it to be darker than my cup, but lighter than my shadow. So I'm going to start fairly light. Adding another layer. Now I'm going to burnish with my gray. So the last and final step is really just thinking about color and thinking about what colors am I hiding within this cup. We want to have areas of complex colors, colors that you might not initially think about putting in this kind of pale green cup. So this is really just your choice. I'm going to actually put a little tiny bit of peach. Just, again, it's really just about having more interesting colors than just your kind of one-dimensional, flat, simple colors. I do wish I had more than just 12 oil pastels. However, I've got to work with what I have, as I'm sure many of you are doing. And a little bit of yellow, just because the light is coming from this direction, and why not? Okay, and there we have it.